Hi, this is Aaron Eisberg, Nog from Star Trek Deep Space Nine, and you're listening to Beyond Trek. You can follow them on Twitter at Beyond Trek Pod and on Facebook at Beyond Trek Productions.
This is Beyond Trek Podcast, your source for Star Trek on social media and around the web. I'm Big J.
I'm Watney.
And I'm Dag, the Trivia Master. You can find us on Facebook at Beyond Trek Podcast and on Twitter at Beyond Trek Pod.
Red alert.
So, today we have Dag and Watney in the room, and we are going to talk about the 25th anniversary of Star Trek Generations, which is this week, as well as new uniform stuff.
Yay.
Welcome, Watney.
Hello. Hello, Dag.
It's been a long time since I've been in the booth.
It's been a minute.
It has.
We're back in action after some fun skits and all that.
So, 25 years ago, 2 days ago, Captain Kirk perished under a bridge, saving Captain Picard and the lives of the Enterprise crew and Viridian 3 from Soren
Spoilers.
trying to destroy the sun. 25 years, still too soon. Ugh, right in the ticker.
Poor baby.
Now, if you've read the books, which I have, you know that Kirk comes back later. We won't spoil that, but there's some cool books out there that stretch the limits of the final frontier in terms of stretch.
So if you are someone in the audience, or maybe someone also that's a co-host and haven't seen Generations, which it's on my list.
Oh, damn.
I know. So you want to just give me a little rundown
Of Star Trek Generations?
if you, yeah, I mean, I know you probably can recite it, but
All right. So Star Trek Generations.
from the top.
It begins with the christening of the Enterprise B.
Mhm.
It's 2293, and Kirk, Chekhov, and Scotty are on the bridge to see this namesake ship get underway under a new captain, Captain John Harriman. And in the middle of the shakedown cruise, they get a distress call, and they go find these two ships that are locked in this pink plasma ribbon that's called the Nexus. And they rescue the people off the ship, and come to see one of them is Guinan. And
Love her.
right. And another thing that happens is because they had to get so close to try to beam them out, Kirk goes down to engineering and tries to rig up some beam that allows the ship to escape. In the process, the ship is hit by this plasma energy right where Kirk is, and he is presumed dead.
Oh no.
Fade to an ocean. Little title card says 78 years later, and there's a big clipper ship in the sea. It says Enterprise. And Captain Picard and Riker and the senior staff are all decked out in period wear, looking like they're sailors on the sea. And it's they're doing a little promotion ceremony for Worf, where he has to jump really high to grab this badge of office, which is basically a hat. And nobody's ever done it, but of course Worf does it because you never underestimate a Klingon. We set the stage for Data exploring emotion here.
Oh, yes! I hate this! It is revolting! More? Please.
Doesn't he throw my second favorite doctor?
I wouldn't say throw. He pushes her. But yes, Crusher.
She takes a long walk off a short plank.
Crusher ends up in the drink.
Yeah. Oh.
And everyone's
It's
like,
just holodeck water.
and everyone's like, that's not really funny. And this sets the stage for Data to start exploring. Like, okay, well, maybe I should get with the program.
Yeah, he has an emotion ship, right? That's like the whole thing.
Not at this time. Like, it's
Okay.
been. It doesn't get that comes later.
Okay.
Anyway, during this ceremony, Picard gets a call, and it's distressing, and he leaves the bridge angry. And at the same time, somebody hails Riker and says, we've just received a distress call from this observatory, and Riker leaves, orders a red alert, and calls Captain Picard to the bridge. We get to this observatory. It's in ruins. There's one survivor. It's this guy named Soren, and if you had a keen eye, you would see that he had been rescued 70 years before by the Enterprise B during that mission. He's an Elorian.
Right.
And he's messing around on this base, and There's dead Romulans everywhere. And the investigation turns up that this guy is rigging a torpedo to explode on the sun. Data and Geordi try to stop it, but Data is having weird emotional issues because he had the chip installed.
The clown can stay, but the Ferengi in the gorilla suit has to go.
And he breaks down, allowing Soren to escape with Geordi, taking Geordi prisoner. The probe, the torpedo is launched, the sun explodes, and the Enterprise escapes by the skin of its teeth.
Okay.
Yeah.
Of course. Movies.
Data and Picard go to this really cool stellar cartography room, which is just them moving through the galaxy that they're mapping sort of into like a 3D map.
Awesome.
And they determine who Soren is and what he might be trying to do. So they're trying to figure out, okay, what effect did this sun do to get Soren closer to his goal, which is back into that plasma ribbon? And you find out that the destruction of this sun has changed gravity in the area, and he's redirecting the ribbon to a specific location by manipulating gravity.
Okay.
Picard talks to Guinan. Guinan says, I really loved being in the Nexus. It was great. If Soren's trying to get back to it, he could be a really dangerous guy. So we chase Soren to this planet called Viridian 3, where he set up a little base and a missile, and he is waiting for time to launch this missile to destroy the sun, to redirect the ribbon even further to this planet, so it will take him away. We find a cloaked Klingon vessel in orbit that has Lursa and B'Etor in their final appearance, foreshadowing. They're helping Soren in exchange for a weapon that will help them retake the Klingon Empire, as always. And in communicating with them, Picard offers himself as an exchange for Geordi, who has been tortured aboard this Klingon ship by Soren. The conditions are Picard gets to beam down to the planet and talk Soren out of blowing up the sun. So Geordi comes back and he passes out. Crusher fixes him up, but there's a surveillance device on his visor, and Lursa and B'Etor are looking for some kind of means for them to be able to blow up Enterprise. Meanwhile, on the surface, Picard is talking to Soren, and he doesn't get very far. They engage in fisticuffs, but Soren's missile launches. In the meantime, again, Lursa and B'Etor have discovered the Enterprise's shield frequency, and they start firing, forcing them to fight in a battle. The Enterprise D is destroyed, but the Klingons die too, forcing everybody to evacuate to the saucer section, which crash lands on the planet.
Oh, yeah, that's that oh shit moment.
Yeah, it is.
Oh shit! Yeah, that's one of my faves.
The missile that was fired blows up the sun. The plasma ribbon engulfs Picard and the Elorian right before the shockwave destroys the planet and everybody aboard. Picard wakes up in like a carousel kind of thing, and there's a covering over his eyes that gets taken off, and there's voices and lights, and as he stops spinning, he realizes that he's in a very decadent home, and it's Christmas, and oh by golly, he has a family. Now I missed a part here, so I'm going to flash back for a second.
Okay.
You remember that phone call Picard got where he walked off scene really angry? Well, he confides in Troy just before the first sun exploded that the phone call was telling him that his brother and nephew had died in a fire, and there will be no more Picards.
Oh,
and
damn.
He had always been confident that his brother could carry on the family line while he could jump around the stars, and now he's sort of troubled. So flashback let's go back to the Nexus. He wakes up, he's in a decadent house, it's Christmas, and he has a family. And Renee is there. His nephew that perished in the fire is there.
Aww.
And this Christmas is great, and everyone's happy, and there's presents and trees, and everyone's dolled up. It's like Dickens. The family goes for dinner, and Picard takes a moment to walk around his house, and a familiar voice rings out from behind him. Guinan is there. It's not really Guinan, it's a spirit of Guinan, the spirit that was sort of left behind when Guinan left the Nexus the first time. And it tells Picard that This isn't real, and you can leave whenever you want to. And if you choose to leave, you can go anywhere, anytime. So he decides that he needs help. He wants to go back to before Soren blew up the star, and he wants to stop that from happening.
Timey, why me?
But he needs help, and he wants Guinan to leave with him. And Guinan says, I can't leave with you. I'm just an echo of that person you knew. I'm already there. But I think I know someone who can help you. And we flash to a cabin sequence where you hear someone chopping wood in the distance. Picard walks around a tree, and there's Captain Kirk chopping wood in his cabin. And Kirk isn't really aware of what's going on. He's just sort of playing the ropes as if this is where he's been the whole time. And they go to inside the cabin, and Kirk is making breakfast, and Picard is like, all business. Hey, I need you to help me. We're stuck inside a temporal nexus, and we need to get to a planet and stops him from destroying a bunch of stars. And Kirk sort of snaps out of it and is like, you know what? I'm in my own personal paradise. I'm dead. I'm pretty sure history owes me one on this one. So I'm gonna go make it right. And he decides that instead of going back to in this timeline, instead of going back to Starfleet, he is going to marry the woman that he fell in love with before we saw the original series movies.
Is that okay?
No.
You know what I'm gonna ask?
It's not. Yeah, it's not Carol.
Okay.
Sorry.
That's all right.
So he goes upstairs, and Picard follows him into what's supposed to be a bedroom, which turns into a stable, because of course this isn't real.
Oh.
Kirk jumps on a horse. It's the day that he's supposed to meet the woman that he wants to propose to. And he decides that he's going to make everything right from the beginning. And he goes off on his horse. Picard follows after him. Kirk jumps across this ravine and gallops away, and then slowly stops, turns around, comes back, jumps across the ravine again. Picard catches up to him and is like, are you okay? And Kirk's like, I jumped across that ravine 50 times. It scared the hell out of me every single time, except this time, because it's not real. And he looks up the hill and sees Alexandra on her horse. He looks over at Picard and says, so you say we have to go save the world, huh? And Picard says, yep. And they ride off into the sunset, and we flash back to Viridian 3. Soren's walking across a bridge. A boot shows up in the foreground. Soren looks up. It's not Jean-Luc Picard this time. It's Captain Kirk. Picard's on the other side of the bridge. They've got him cornered. A big O fisticuffs takes loop. Soren sort of wiggles out of the way. Kirk says, hey, you go for the missile complex. I'll take care of Soren. And over the course of this fight, Picard is able to get to the missile, locks it out, but before he can do that, Kirk had to jump across this bridge that had been fired upon by Soren to get the controller for the missile to decloak it so that Picard can do what he needs to do. The bridge collapses. That's the last we see of Kirk. Soren orders Picard away from the missile. Picard runs like a bat out of hell. Soren gets up to the missile control to see he's got half a second before it detonates, and it explodes in his face. He's dead. The day is saved. And when the dust clears, Picard is going down the mountain to see Kirk underneath the ruins of this bridge. Kirk is breathing hard. He looks at Picard and he says, did we do it? Did we make a difference? And Picard says, yes.
Wow.
Kirk says, it's the least I could do with the captain of the Enterprise.
I'm gonna cry.
Oh my. And he goes slack.
So at what point, I'm sorry to interrupt here, but at what point does Kirk tell Picard not to get promoted?
Right there during the whole breakfast scene. He's like, you're working Starfleet, huh? He's like, yep. Well, let me tell you something. Don't let them promote you. Don't let them do anything that'll take you off the bridge of that ship, because while you're there, you can make a difference.
It's very true.
Because Kirk had been promoted to admiral, and he was an admiral for about 13 years before he was demoted for disobeying regulations. Oh no, let's give the craziest captain of the galaxy his own ship. Yay.
So after Kirk passes away, dies.
Picard carries him to the top of a mountain and covers him in stones and puts his badge on the stone to identify the grave of Captain Kirk. A shuttlecraft comes and escorts him back to the wreck of the Enterprise. There's not a lot of casualties. Data cries over Spot, coming to accept the fact that his emotions are pretty well handled now.
Wait.
Spot does not die.
Okay.
Sorry, I misled everybody who hasn't seen Generations, and the listeners are like, he doesn't die. And I'm like,
Look,
no, you're
Kirk
right. He
fine.
doesn't.
Spot though?
Data
Spot dying?
Data finds Spot safe in a canister.
Of course he does. Of course.
Spot's meowing.
Yeah.
And Data cries. He's very happy to see Spot.
So good.
And
So wholesome.
he comes to terms that his emotions are good now,
Mhm.
and they're not going to take control of him.
Oh, because he can feel love and joy and gratitude.
Yeah. Picard is going through the ruins of his ready room, and he tosses away some priceless artifacts in favor of his photo album that has pictures of his brother and nephew. And he talks to Riker, and Picard says, I once heard someone say time is the fire in which we burn, but I prefer to think of it as a friend who goes with us on the journey and reminds us to treasure every moment because it'll never come again. To which Riker says, speak for yourself, sir. I plan to live forever. And they beam up to a rescue ship and wharf off into the distance. And the best score from any Star Trek movie ever plays. You can fight that if you want to. It's cool. So yeah, that's Star Trek Generations in a nutshell.
Thank you.
The uniforms that we see on screen are the original series. We mean the Next Generation red uniforms.
Yes.
And the Next Generation crew goes through this mix-up between their TV series uniforms and the uniforms that at the time were worn on Deep Space Nine. I mean that literally. Geordi is wearing Miles O'Brien's uniform, and Riker is wearing Cisco's.
Mm-hmm. Lots of fun uniform stuff for this one.
Lots of fun uniform stuff.
Yeah, you want to talk about the toys?
Oh, you go right ahead.
So, before there was like concept art for Generations and happy 25th anniversary. Concept art for new uniforms for the movie. I think at one point, doesn't Data wear a Voyager uniform?
So it's at the time, the Voyager uniform and the DS9 uniform were the same.
Right. Okay, right. Before the gray, beautiful.
Before the gray
sleek.
shoulders came
Okay.
out, yep. But Voyager hadn't come out yet.
So, okay, gotcha. So they're like playing with concepts for uniforms at this time. And they come up with this concept and they start production on toys, but it gets reversed and they start wearing, the DS9 uniforms.
Yep.
And so there are a bunch of toys by Playmates that were released that have this uniform design, and personally leaves a lot to be desired. But then again, it is toys. So it's basically consists of a two-piece, and this jacket kind of like pulls over onto one side. The collar is very long on one side and it kind of probably clasps or something like that. It's just not as like sleek. The collar is a different color than like the shoulders, and it's just like the collar would be the like red or yellow or blue, and then the shoulders are like black, and then it goes back to the color on the second half. It just kind of looks really disorganized, and that's not even including like the female version of this uniform, which has basically like a cinched waist that goes up to like almost like the
rib cage.
It's touching the rib cage. It's giving it a good hug.
Yeah,
it's definitely embracing the rib cage. Basically, it looks like some high-waisted jeans that you see people walking around in today.
Yeah. It's like they tried to take those original series red military-looking uniforms and say, well, what if we did the same thing but kept the division colors intact?
Right.
And it didn't work.
Yeah. Some of the concept art doesn't look too bad, but like it doesn't really translate well into the toys. So if you're listening and you haven't seen these, really suggest that you give them a look. It's a fun little piece of trivia. And so thank you, Dag, for the synopsis. I know I appreciate it. And hopefully I wasn't, I'm not worried about being spoiled, but since it, 25 years ago. However, at the time before release, one of the scripts got leaked. And apparently it was widely known after that happened that Kirk was going to die before the movie even came out.
Yeah, test footage was really, really poorly taken by test audiences too. In the sequence where Kirk was supposed to die, he's actually shot in the back by Soren. It's really anticlimactic and unhero-like. And so they actually had to do reshoots just a couple of months before the premiere to give Kirk a much more sacrificial moment.
I did not know that. Wow. Well, I mean, I'm glad they, tried. But yeah, poor Kirk. He definitely deserved
I'm glad
better.
they fixed it.
Yeah, I'm glad too. That's not the way for him to go. I mean, he's such an icon. So
yeah.
And so you said the ribbon is called the Nexus.
Yeah.
Is that where your Twitter handle comes from?
Trek Nexus. That's in fact, so yeah, if you're listening, Trek Nexus is my personal Twitter account for all things related to Star Trek that aren't for Beyond Trek. But my banner on that is a picture of Soren praising the Nexus coming to him on Viridian 3.
Okay.
So as a Nexus is a collection of all things, I felt it very fitting for it to be the Trek Nexus as a collection of all things Trek.
Huh. I like it. The symbolism.
Thanks.
So we mentioned that Kirk tells Picard not to get promoted, right? Well, what does he go and do?
Kirk?
Picard?
Yeah, he went and got promoted.
He went and got promoted, and now look where he's at. Out gallivanting out somewhere, meeting up with Troy and Riker again.
Yeah. If you've seen the trailer for Star Trek Picard, we find out that Picard was an admiral at some point before something really bad happened, and he left Starfleet. And we catch up with Picard in January of 2020 to see where the rest of his path takes him.
Mm-hmm. So.
And some dope uniforms.
Dope. I mean, I think they look so good. I think they're clean. Personally, I love the Voyager uniform is like my second love. It was like my first. And then I became acquainted with the DS9 gray uniforms, and I was like, wow, those are awesome. But so they are two-piece. They'll be two-piece. I'm sure they'll have at the feet, on the heels, the loops. Classic. Division colored shoulders, a kind of a mock turtleneck, high collars. Design influences are apparently from the Next Generation. With the collar, it's like a Mandarin style, but you do see the division color influence from Voyager.
Yeah, so that yoke is preserved.
Mm-hmm.
Which is kind of nice. I mean, the Deep Space Nine uniforms with the gray shoulders, they're sort of associated with the transition to the Dominion War.
The darker, definitely darker themes.
They have that dark element, and they have that militaristic feeling to them.
Mm-hmm.
And having the division colors brought back, not only representative of TNG and have that color schema back, but also to sort of just represent a return to happier times. You know, we didn't get a lot in this part of the galaxy after Deep Space Nine ended, with the exception of one clip in Voyager returning home, spoiler, and we got Star Trek Nemesis.
Wait, for what?
For just actions or occurrences that happen in this part of the galaxy. We got
Nemesis. Fun fact, Nemesis was my first Star Trek interaction.
Well,
so everything kind of goes up from there. You know, of course, Tom Hardy,
Tom Hardy, of course. It's kind of sad to
Baby
have.
Tom Hardy.
I would have been sad if my first interaction had been Nemesis, just because of the way it ends and who we lose.
Yeah, it did really kind of set the tone, but like for some reason, I saw that when I was like really young. I think when it came out, actually, I saw it, and so I kind of like maybe didn't retain like the ending a whole lot, but when I was in college and Netflix brought on all of the series, I just started binging it. And that's kind of how I got into Star Trek. I was never one of those kids, unfortunately, who watched it, every week. Would have loved that.
And now you're the captain of your own starship.
Indeed. Yes, Captain Brie Archuleta on the USS Fenrir. Streaming Tuesdays, 9 Eastern to 11 p.m. Eastern.
And you can find Watney on Twitter at.
You can find me on Twitter. I usually tweet out the link at Watney. What's my Twitter? Watney of BTP, Beyond Trek Productions. So, if you're interested in some good old Star Trek Adventures roleplay, hit that up on Tuesday nights. And on the streams, I'm wearing a replica Picard uniform, by the way, just to kind of bring it back full circle here. So if we look at the uniform, the comm badge actually sits below the division color
The yoke?
line. The yoke.
Yep.
Is that what that term is? Yoke?
That's
Yoke,
what that
yoke?
term is.
So it's under the yoke on the left side of, well, if you're looking at the person, it's on the right side. But, and then all the pips sit on the opposite side at the bottom edge of the yoke on the color. And then you have a cool collar with like a cut in the center that points down. And then on the yoke, you have a straight line across, except for in the center, and it's like kind of like a little divot of the color into the black. It looks really slick.
Yeah, it does. I have to admit,
And
when I first saw them, I was like, oh no, they're just rehashing the Voyager uniforms. But as I have been looking at them more and more and seeing these extra details in the yoke, they do feel a bit more
elevated.
Just those little changes. They feel a little futuristic.
Yeah, more futuristic, but still, like familiar. Like I love the familiarity, but like the update, it's like an upgrade a little bit.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
So these are circa 2390 to 2400. And I believe after 2400 is like STO.
Yeah,
era.
STO picks up at 2409.
Right. So we have a little bit of lag time.
A little bit, yeah.
Yeah, I think they look really great. I mean, also it looks like we're going to be getting a colored, maybe not a color. You know how like in DS9 it was like purple underneath for a while?
The tunic
like
shirt.
Like a mock neck, yeah. Mock turtleneck. It looks almost purple in this like concept art, or maybe it's just patterned or something. But yeah, we will be getting like an undershirt. It's not going to be like the naked like neck color of like early TNG, which kind of weirds me out now, like going back and watching the early episodes.
Yeah.
I'm just like, God, people put a scarf on. Are you cold? Like, it's just too bare for me. Too bare.
One of the interesting things about those undershirts is you can tell that either the wardrobe person was unable to get a hold of the same color for each person.
Wait, what do you mean? Where are you looking?
It's just the gray turtlenecks when they had the Voyager-like uniforms.
Oh yeah.
It was like the wardrobe department was unable to get the same color fabric for all of the uniforms. So you have some frames where, O'Brien is standing next to Sisko, and Sisko's shirt looks lilac compared to O'Brien's darker gray.
Mm-hmm.
Even though they're probably both tones of gray, just the way the camera picked it up and the way the TV filtered it.
The
there's
lighting.
definitely times where it looks purple compared to gray. Now
I
I'm over here like, don't you call it purple? It's not purple, but it's definitely purple.
Okay, I'm sorry. Purple gray,
Totally
periwinkle, is that better? Is that what periwinkle is?
Periwinkle's blue. It's light blue.
Light blue. Okay. Well, and also you see this in DS9, you see like sometimes they wear stuff unzipped, like the collar unzipped, and you see more of that purple/gray or gray/purple, if that's better, more respectable. But and I feel like, it just kind of looks. I didn't see a whole lot of that in Voyager. That was like a DS9 thing, if I'm remembering right. But I just really like the DS9 uniforms because they feel clean. They feel dark and goth. I'm just into that. Like, I'm into that dark aesthetic. I like the dark Trek.
I like the aesthetic because it makes it feel a bit more serious in tone, and it was. I mean, DS9. That's the Dominion War is the heart of that series. Anybody who is listening and knows that will agree. And if you're not agreeing with me, you probably haven't seen the series, or you just didn't like it, and that's cool too. But they took these bright, vibrant colors and said, we don't want these bright, vibrant colors in the middle of our war. So we got these dark gray, serious uniforms, and they're just so striking.
They're striking. They're imposing. They're intimidating. They're much more intimidating. Like wartime. It's just wartime aesthetic. Like, I love the stripe texture on it is just enough. It just looks really awesome. I love it. And then, like with these new Picard uniforms versus STO uniforms, for example, the detail is so much less, at least like looking at the concept and then what you can see in the trailers. It looks a lot more like plain and tailored. And I don't think that's a bad thing. But like in STO, you have like all this like ribbing and like shiny like fabric, like in different textures and depth to the uniform. And I just think like I've never been a huge fan of STO uniforms. I think that they look like jumpsuity, but still with a belt, which I don't like. I think they are separates, but like it looks to me like one single uniform, and it just throws me off a little bit. But yeah, that versus the Picard uniforms that we're seeing just in the trailer, it's hard to extrapolate anything officially, but they do look a little more simpler, and I'm a fan of that.
Yeah, I'm excited to see where Picard goes. And I know that not everybody's going to be wearing a uniform in that show because Picard left Starfleet. It almost feels like it's going to be like Firefly with Picard at the helm.
I know. Yes. Have I said that before? I feel like it's definitely giving me space western.
Right?
Like I'm totally getting the crew vibe, ragtag group of people going against the establishment.
The aged gunslinger puts a crew together to take on an injustice.
Yeah, and him and like the badass chick have history.
Yeah.
And then there's like a young brunette girl with special powers or something. Who
Notice how her voice has got really gritty.
I know. I mean, there are a lot of similarities, which it wouldn't tick those boxes in my head and remind me of it if there weren't. But, you have like, it's just, which I'm not complaining. I love Firefly, but it'll be good. I think it'll be good. He's kind of like, he knows Picard has always had like a compass, a true moral compass. He knows what he believes. And he probably left Starfleet for holding to that. That's probably, in my opinion, what's going to happen in Picard is he's going to have made a choice and done something that was against a direct order. And maybe it has to do with Romulus. And so he will be basically trying to maybe fix things or redeem himself from what he did there. Maybe he made a huge mistake. Who knows? But it definitely feels like he's going outside the walled garden of Starfleet.
Yep. It's going to be awesome. And hopefully it ushers in a kind of renaissance for Star Trek again.
I'm ready. I mean, I'm so ready. You put Troy and Riker in a trailer. I'm a simple woman. Like, I'm going to be there. I'm going to watch that. I mean, shit, I may even pay for CBS All Access because I like Discovery, but that's really where my heart is. I think hopefully they can marry the nostalgia and love everyone feels for TNG onward and the future.
Yep.
So, well, I think that's all we had for today. Did you have anything else, Dag?
No, I just wanted to say that the DS9 dress uniforms that were white were the most amazing uniforms ever, and nobody can stop me believing that. And thanks for listening.
I agree.
And everybody who's still here with us, thanks for listening to Beyond Trek podcast. And you can find us on Twitter at Beyond Trek Pod.
And we'll see you on the next one.
We are Beyond Trek Podcast. Lower your inhibitions and surrender your ears. We will add inspirational and hilarious Trek content to your day. Your attention will adapt to subscribe to us. Resistance is futile.